A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you another book review today, so cheers. Now, I've been going through this huge nostalgia kick with early Dungeons & Dragons things, second edition source books, the early Dungeons & Dragons novels, something that my brother actually put me onto. He was the one that got me to read Ed Greenwood's Spellfire. He was the one that discovered the Dragonlance Chronicles trilogy, Dragons of Autumn Twilight, Dragons of Winter Night, Dragons of Spring Dawning. So I've really got a lot of this like nostalgic feelings and this nostalgia kick. I can thank him for that because he was the one that really got me into Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy. At the time, I was mainly focused on horror, and all of these books that I read kind of growing up, I'm going back and starting to revisit. And that brings us to today's novel. This is Shadowdale by Richard Awlinson, the first book in the Avatar trilogy. Now, before I get started with any explanations, I want to show you exactly where in the Forgotten Realms this book takes place. So let's just jump straight to the map. So as I always like to do in these videos, I just want to show you this is the Forgotten Realms, where the novel itself actually takes place in the scheme of things. And if we come down here to, I just lost it. Suzail, nope. There we are. The city of Arabelle. And then the action moves up into Shadowdale. So this is the area in which the novel itself takes place. Okay, let's get back to it. Now, this is an important early Dungeons & Dragons Forgotten Realms fantasy novel because it's a trilogy that bridges the gap between first edition Dungeons & Dragons, the game, and second edition Dungeons & Dragons, the game. There are four main characters in this. We have Kelemvor the fighter, Midnight the wizard or mage, Cyric, who is a fighter/thief, and Aiden, who is a cleric of the goddess Sun or Sune, I've heard it pronounced both ways, who is the goddess of beauty. And we also have the gods as main characters. Primarily in this novel, Bane, the god of strife, Mystra, the god of magic, Helm, the god of guardians. They're the kind of main ones, although as the trilogy progresses, other gods kind of come into play. Why is this important? Well, it's important because it basically changed the way the game system worked. And this book was an explanation as for why that happened. It wasn't like they just throw a new game system at you and you're expected to change from first edition to second edition. This trilogy of novels actually explained why those changes take place and how to incorporate those changes into the game itself, which is fascinating. But on top of that, it's a fucking good story. The characters are so different, so well-rounded. The gods are exactly as you would expect them to be. It's a really, really fun read. And at the moment, I'm in the process of reading the second book in the trilogy. It's not something that I do very often. I usually will read book one and then read something else and then come back to book two. But this time I just want to read the whole thing and review it for you little Plaguelandians out there. If you don't want any spoilers, go and watch another video, an RPG video or whatever. that we have put up on the channel. But if you do want to know the story of Shadowdale, then stick around for the next episode of...
Read a fucking book. Read a fucking book. Read a fucking book. People.
Oh boy, what I'd forgotten about this book is that it ends on a cliffhanger, which was freaking awesome and kind of unheard of at the time. Now, as I said, we start with our 4 characters. Kelemvor, Cyric, and Aiden have kind of been working together. They're in the city of Arabel. You saw it on the map. Arabel is under the leadership of this female harper called Mermin Lal, who is a prominent character in the novel The Night Parade, but that's neither here nor there. They have done a great service to her by discovering who this traitor was, and they are currently all working for the guard. They are in a tavern one night, and they're approached by this woman, Midnight, who needs to kind of go on this quest with them. Now, what you need to understand before all of this is that the gods have been banished from their homes in the plains. The tablets of fate have gone missing. Lord Ao, who really created the gods, banished them all to the realms. He feels they've become too complacent. Their power comes from their worshippers, and they just kind of take it for granted. So now they are in avatars, in human bodies, mortal bodies, in the realms. And until the tablets of fate are found, they are not getting back into their homes in the plains. The heroes themselves, like Aiden, who is a cleric of Sune Firehair, he cannot access his magic, his clerical magic, unless he's within 1 mile of his goddess. And so Midnight basically convinces them to help her on this quest to rescue Mistra, the goddess of magic, who's being held in Castle Kilgrave. Now, Kelemvor the Fighter, hugely entertaining character. He's basically the good guy. However, he cannot do something for someone unless he is paid in return. He has a bloodline curse on him. If he does a deed for somebody and is not rewarded for it, he turns into a panther until he kills someone, and then he can revert back to his human form. So everything is a negotiation with him, which a lot of the characters see as being selfish and whatnot. Kelemvor and Cyric are under contract with Mermin Lal to be guardsmen in Arabel. There is a goddess, Timora, who is in Arabel at the moment, but a lot of people kind of don't know if it's really her or if it's not or whatever. As they've taken up with Midnight to go to Castle Kilgrave with her and this child, Caitlin, who is supposed to be the next avatar of Mistra, they hatch a scheme to flee Arabel under cover of night and travel to this castle. When Mermin Lal discovers this, she is pissed off because they broke contract and sends people after them. They get to Castle Kilgrave. They discover that the god of strife, Bane, his avatar, has actually got the essence of Mistra held captive. And a fight ensues, and they end up basically freeing Mistra and defeating Bane. Mistra, knowing what she knows about who stole the Tablets of Fate. The Tablets of Fate were actually stolen by Bane and the god of the dead, Merkel. Goes to a celestial stairway and speaks to the god Helm, who is guarding it. Helm is the only god that is allowed to remain in the realms. He is like Lord Ao's right-hand man. And she says, look, I know who stole the tablets. let me back into my home. And Helm and Mystra get into a fight, and Mystra is ultimately destroyed, which means magic now is just fucking haywire across the realms. You cast a spell, you don't know what the fuck is going to happen. Bane manages to get to Zentel Keep and recuperate, while Mystra sends Midnight, Kelemvor, Cyric, and Aiden to Shadowdale to speak to Elminster the Sage, who is basically the most powerful wizard of good in the Forgotten Realms. So they travel, they get ambushed and whatnot, and they fight. The land is changing because the gods are on Earth now. So like mountains will smash together and rivers will flow backwards and things like that. At the same time, Bane decides, using his henchmen, Fazal Shambrel, Semamon, and Manshoon, he's going to invade the Dale lands. And the reason, primarily Shadowdale, hence the name of the book. The reason for this is because there is a celestial stairway in Shadowdale in the Temple of Lathander. Lathander being the god of good. Or Dawnbringer, god of the sun, however you want to view him. So he organizes this huge army, and they're going to march on the Dales. Midnight, Kelemvor, Cyric, and Aiden get to Shadowdale, and they inform Elminster of what is going to happen. At the same time, a spy that Shadowdale had placed within the Zentarum is captured, but rescued by Elminster, and explains exactly what will happen, the plot, and all of that. So the Dale Lands prepares for war. So this is a war between the Zentarum and Shadowdale. So as the Zentarum approach, all of our heroes are given various tasks. However, on the journey, Aiden was ambushed leaving the town of Tilverton. Now, Tilverton, for those of you that remember this, and there might be a few of you out there, if you ever played the SSI video game Curse of the Azure Bonds, Tilverton was the starting town. That was where your characters woke up with the brands on them, and where you fought the first evil faction, the Fire Knives. When I read that the characters were in Tilverton, I basically shit my pants. It was freaking awesome. So he's got this giant scar running down his face. Now, he is a cleric of the goddess of beauty. He's always been incredibly handsome, incredibly charismatic, but with this scar, he thinks his goddess has forsaken him. So he goes into this almost catatonic state, and they've got to kind of drag him around and things like that. Now, he is pretty much useless. All he does is research for the final battle, and the Zentarum approach, and we see each of the characters have their role. Kelemvor is now kind of a general in the Dale Lands army. Cyric is leading these people to stop an ambush, which he does surprisingly well by blowing up a bridge, and also deals an almost killing blow to one of the top Zentarum, Zal Shambrel, the High Priest of Bane, by shooting an arrow through his chest. And Bane discovers what is happening in the Temple of Lathander, where Elminster is casting wards and whatnot to protect the Celestial Stairway. He kind of understands what's going on. He also lets Midnight know that the gods are after the Tablets of Fate, and one of the Tablets of Fate is in a city called Tantris, which is the name of Book 2. Bane manages to sneak into the Temple of Lathander because Aiden didn't do the warding correctly, and he attacks Elminster while Elminster is opening this rift. Midnight kind of stops him. Bane gets the upper hand and kind of takes out Midnight, Aiden, and Elminster. But with the rift open, Elminster discovers that Mystra, after being killed by Helm, has actually become an elemental of magic, and she ends up completely obliterating Bane. The Temple of Lathander starts to crumble. Bane, before he dies, throws Elminster into the rift. They try to rescue him, but they can't, and the rift seals up as the Temple of Lathander crumbles. At this point, the Knights of Mithranor come to the aid of the Dalelanders. The Zentarum are routed, and they flee the Dales. So basically, although there's a lot of casualties on both sides, Shadowdale is saved. But Elminster is gone. The Temple of Lathander is destroyed. Midnight and Aiden manage to get out alive. However, when the Knights of Mithranor, primarily Storm Silverhand, discover that they are unscathed, they go into the ruins of the temple. They find body parts, which are really like the smashed remains of Bane's avatar. They find those remains and tattered fragments of Elminster's robe and Elminster's spellbooks and artifacts partially destroyed. Midnight and Aiden are arrested for his murder. That is where the story ends. Now, the proof that Storm has is that earlier in the novel, there was a temple of Timora, I believe, and some assassins went in and slaughtered all the clergy and the congregants and painted Bane's symbol on the wall, and Aiden was the first one to discover this. So when the guard get there, he is the only one there, so they kind of assume he did it and whatnot. So that's part of her kind of thinking. This was fantastic. This was a nostalgia trip like you would not believe. I loved every minute of reading this. Primarily because I'd forgotten a lot of it. Like, I knew the key story moments, but it was the parts in between that really made this a fun, enjoyable read for me. And I recommend this to everyone that loves, first of all, Dungeons & Dragons, everyone that loves the Forgotten Realms, and anyone that wants a jumping off point into reading early Forgotten Realms novels. Sure, you can go back and read the Dark Walker or Moonshade trilogy, or the Moonshade trilogy, I should say. The Finder's Stone trilogy would still be my favorite, but this is just Dungeons & Dragons writing at its best. To the point where, if you look at the party, Kelemvor, Fighter, Aiden, Cleric, Midnight, Wizard, Cyric, Thief. You've got your 4 major class parties from the original D&D wrapped up into one group. On trial for murder of Elminster, the Sage of Shadowdale. Where does it go from here? While reading the novel Tantris, I'm about a third of the way through it. I can tell you, only goes up. Awesome series, awesome first book in the trilogy. Highly recommend it. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, leave a comment, do all of that other fucking stuff. But most importantly, stay safe. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And of course, read a fucking book, people.